place? What are those boundaries you put in place? What is that change agreement? I mean, we're very good at doing change agreements, which is something I invented, which is fabulous, especially with the young adult and the family. I'm going to agree to support you in health and wellness. These are sort of my rules and love and compassion. And this is what you do. And if you don't do this, you get to go to a higher level of care.
Hello, I am B. Reeves with New Waters Recovery in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to our weekly podcast, Finding New Waters. Our goal in creating Finding New Waters is to provide a resource for families to help navigate the complexities of supporting a loved one struggling with substance use or mental health. When we find ourselves in crisis due to one of these issues, most people have no idea where to turn. We hope to shed some light onto what is often the darkest hour for many families. Thank you. All right, welcome to another edition of the Finding New Waters podcast. I'm sitting here with my friend, colleague, and CEO of New Waters Recovery, Justin McClendon, and I'm B. Reeves, Director of Business Development at New Waters Recovery, and our very special guest, Dr. Louise Stanger out in San Diego, who has become a friend of mine over the last few years and is a acclaimed author, an interventionist and therapist, and works with families and just is an amazing person. We're lucky to have her, and I'm lucky to know her. So welcome, Louise.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be with you today, Justin. That makes my heart happy.
Good. So tell us just in a couple of words, kind of, what do you do? How do you describe what you do, Louise?
Oh, that's a great question because I do a lot of different things, but I think someone was kind enough to call me a family whisperer.
Oh, I love that.
I work with high acuity families whose loved ones have been beset with a substance use disorder, a mental health disorder, chronic pain, oppositional defiance, you name it. Or they have a loved one that's older and help them move to change. I believe that change is systemic. I believe that nothing changes until everything changes. When people talk about your identified loved one, which is your patient or your client at New Waters, which I absolutely love, and I've had the privilege of experiencing your magic. So I do that, and I do that in a variety of different ways. I have my own business, which is called All About Interventions. It's been in establishment for a long time. And if you ask me, how did you get the name AAI? I thought I'd be first in the yellow pages. So we're not going to date me because there are no yellow pages anymore. But when I left university life, and I had been doing interventions on the side invitationally, that's how I came up with the name. But I have that practice, of which I help move people to change. I also do a lot of family coaching, but you know me best because I'm so excited because I serve as the director of family programming for youth prevention mentors with Max Ezrin, Jack Vaughn, and all of his fabulous mentors. And really their job is to help mitigate risk and let parents be parents. And what I like most about that particular position is I don't know if you knew I was a university professor for many years.
I did know that. That's where you met John,
Okay, good.
correct?
Yeah, the campus committee on substance abuse. If you can ever imagine meeting a senior associate AD on that kind of committee and being a young widow and him a divorcee and following love. So there is true stories that love does happen on college campuses. But it's crazy. While I was there at university, I had two major grants. One grant actually ended up to be five different grants, but it was a peer mentoring grant, and it was called Student to Student. And it started out just the way you might imagine, with very, very high risk students, people that had been in prison, were newly in recovery, and they were able to matriculate onto San Diego State University and be able to go there. And if they did well, they would able to go on to undergraduate. If they did really well, they'd be able to get a master's in social work. And that happened. But that particular model or process, because I don't believe in models, that process quickly morphed into the cool guys, like sorority, the fraternity people, and then became disseminated across 25 universities. So now you have the network of higher education for alcohol. That was the standard for it then. The other grant I had was a parent-based intervention to reduce high-risk problematic drinking at the University of San Diego. And that was an NIH, NIAAA grant with a three-legged stool. What do I mean by that? It had Prochaska and De Clemente, who you know from Stages of Change. It had Rob Teresi, who is now a professor of biobehavioral health at Penn State University. And there was just the notion that, parents were very important, that they had to be part of the solution. And this was done. And so I met Max Ezrin, the founder of YPM, very serendipitously. A rabbi asked me if I would work with a family in New Jersey. I obviously live in California and I can work across state lines, not with with my coaching license, with my coaching certificate, not as a clinician, but as a coach. And I was working with a family who was problematic. They had a son who was a senior at a prep school, wanted to go to USC, but really was not doing much. And he had a great therapist, and Max was his coach. And we got along really well. And I really liked this approach because obviously I did this on our college campus. So this was my heart singing. And after that, had a very, very complicated high acuity case up in near Stanford, which was two twins. One twin, of course, of the two sets of twins was acting out, had obsessive compulsive behavior, had a lot of problems, had an analyst that wasn't going to move him to change. And I hired Max and his company, and it had a very successful outcome. We ended up doing what we call treatment without walls, but then he ended up in a treatment center. And that's how I became involved. I loved the work. I loved the talent of the mentors. And I loved the fact that it was everybody working. So I do that. I've written a couple books, as you know. The first book's autobiography. It's called Falling Up, a memoir of resilience. The second book is actually the only textbook in the United States actually commissioned by a textbook house, Routledge, real deal, which was on intervention. It was called The Definitive Guide to Intervention, a Collective Strategy. Much to my delight, it's still used at universities across the country, and it talks about family mapping, of which I'm very good at and sort of famous for. My third book was a bestseller. I thought I was so cool, Justin. No, I did. I thought I was so cool. I was speaking at a medical society conference up in Remington, Washington, somewhere in the middle of everywhere. And there were very few behavioral health places. It was all doctors. And I was talking about chronic pain. I was talking about trauma. And I thought it was so cool. I was going back to live in the desert, and I was off to go to X number treatment center to talk the next week. And I had a book deal in my hand. And I just said, oh, sure, I can write Addiction in the Family, helping families navigate just out of my sleep. I don't know what I was thinking, but the world helped me, because when I was at that conference, I didn't pay attention to what the doctors were saying. They were saying the plane is coming. I thought it was like the plane. What plane is coming? What are you talking about? Well, that plane happened to be the first patients from China who had COVID.
Oh, interesting.
So I flew home, and it was about March 10th. And I had this contract, and I signed, no, I'm going to do this in my spare time. Well, it turned out I had a lot of spare time, because on March 13th, the world shut still. And I signed a contract. They wanted a very, very quick turnaround. The book actually had to be done by July, which you learn how to write really fast, but also never go back till the very end to check your mistakes. And it was on the shelves by October.
Wow.
Wow.
So so that was my third book. And my fourth book's going to be on the shelves in a couple weeks.
What's that about?
Yeah, can you give us a little preview of that one?
Oh, I'd love to. It's very spicy and
Okay.
sassy.
Okay.
It's a little different than what I usually do because I'm going to be 78 this year in October. It's called Reflections on Aging from the Sunset Marquee. But it's really Sunset Marquee happens to be in West Hollywood. It's the home of Morrison Gallery, rock stars. I've been there many times. I've done interventions there. I used to walk by when I lived in West Hollywood. But it's really like, how do you, everybody, it's not necessarily your end, but everybody's going to age. And how do we do it with fun? And how do we do it snappy? And so the chapters are fun. It's in collaboration with a world famous photographer by the name of Cheryl Fox. And she does like Beyonce, all kinds of people. You can check her out. But, the chapters are quick and fast, but they give you things to do, like let the music in. Obviously, Morrison Gallery is all full of rock stars. Be active, reflect, talk about the tough stuff. And that's what we have to do as clinicians. That's what you do so beautifully at New Waters. Talk about that tough stuff. Because I'm a woman, I had put your big girl panties on. If it was a guy, I could put your boots on. And then celebrate. So it's a fun book. It has a good message to it. It's not heavy. But again, it's reflective on all of us are going to age.
Cool. So this is not recovery intervention specific. This is just about aging.
No, this is about aging and about but I have a lot of tips on intervention. I have a lot of tips, but it's
Okay.
just really,
Cool.
it's an integrated wellness approach.
I love that. That's
So,
awesome.
and it's fun. And it's also looks really good because if you look up Cheryl Fox, she's a world famous photographer. And so the photos in it are really fabulous.
That's awesome.
And so it's one of those books that you could pick up, you could give to a friend. It's got some good stuff, but it's not, it does talk a little bit about addiction, but it's not, it's really geared to the general public.
That's awesome.
Well, sounds like a Christmas gift for my mom.
Right?
Yes, your mom would love it.
I hope I
your
can get a
moms would
signed copy from you.
You can. They're about ready. Right now, where it is right this second. I mean, I can send you what the cover is going to look like. Right now. It'll be in Barnes and Nobles and Amazon, and I will have a prototype to take that's being sent to me to the Cape.
Awesome.
So it's going to be within a month. It's going to be everywhere. So
That's
yes.
great. That's great. We'll definitely keep our eye out.
Yeah,
for sure.
What? So we know what you do, what you've written, and what you've got coming out in your degrees. Kind of, how did you find your way on this trajectory into this line of work?
Love that question. So I was born on a fault line of trauma. I've experienced 6 sudden deaths in my life. Probably starting with my father. Well, I was a 3rd generation widow. I don't know which death to start with, meaning my grandfather died giving a political speech the summer before I was born. My own father died suddenly, unexpectedly, and tragically by suicide when I was 7. I didn't know till I was much later that he followed his mother and father's footsteps because he had mental health illnesses and substance abuse. My mother had a substance use disorder. Depression ran in her family. And a mentor, somehow or other, they saved enough money to send me away to camp, Wood Echo. And Leon Rubenstein, who ran the local YMCA, Ike's, took me under his wing. And so what I learned by shoveling manure, by shooting bows and arrows, by riflery, by being in a safe place, how to navigate. Later, my 3rd child, which was my only son, died by SIDS death. You don't expect that to happen if you're white if your husband's a dentist, if you live in a because it was, and police stand guard. And that was very, very hard, really challenging. Um, and I was a social worker by trade. Okay. And I went after my first husband also died suddenly and unexpectedly after biking 60 miles. He was in great shape, so we thought, in the desert the day after Easter in his early 40s. So I was in my early 40s. I had been a great graduate student. I had my master's when I was 22, 21, and I was invited to teach. And luckily, they would take me back in to teach. So I went back to the university to teach, but I was also good at getting money. And alcohol and drugs floated around me with people I knew. I had every characteristic of what you call an adult child of an alcoholic. I have a lot of isms, work being the main one, but I had a child that had problems as well, plus a husband. So when I went back to the university, it was a time of beginnings, just like New Waters is a beginning. It was the time when in San Diego, Scripps Hospital was a big time thing, but over there in the desert, there was this little treatment center opening, and it was called Betty Ford.
Oh.
And and Mrs. Ford was starting hers, and that was revolutionary at the time. And really there was a paucity of treatment in San Diego. So and at the same time, the universities and the federal government said, hey, there's a problem on college campuses. And San Diego State was known as the #1 party school in the nation. But they also said, social workers, marriage family counselors, psychologists, they have no course at all related to substance abuse. Because when you thought about it, all the graduate students, all they wanted to do was get to the good stuff. And the good stuff they thought was mental health, but they forgot that 90% of the people had also a substance use disorder. So I was given Joan Kroc, who founded McDonald's, was very philanthropic. She had had alcoholism in her family. And she had helped fund at school the Center on Substance Abuse. And also the federal government said, you know what, schools of social work, you got to have a class in substance abuse, in alcohol and other drugs. And I was given the opportunity to create the first graduate seminar in the country. So we did not know what we were doing. There was, a lot of time. I'm not going to say we did, but we would bring in guest lecturers. And, we knew there was some research shook it. There's twin studies, all this kind of stuff. But we would bring in guest lecturers because along the way into my classroom one day came a gentleman. Do you know who Dr. Frank Picard is?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So do you know who Vern Johnson was? Dr. Vern Johnson.
Name does not sound familiar. Yeah, tell us. Enlighten us.
Okay, so Vern Johnson was the granddaddy of interventions.
Okay.
He was the doc. Quit tomorrow. So into my classroom comes this tall, stately, pastoral kind of gentleman named Dr. Frank Picard. He was then head of what was Springbrook, which was freestanding in Oregon. Now it's owned by Hazelton.
Mm-hmm.
And he was best friends with Vern Johnson, but he thought, I don't know if I agree with all this. I quit tomorrow. So he wrote a book that I still have on my bookshelf behind me called Family Intervention.
Okay.
And he came, he spoke. I have no idea what my students were doing. My heart stopped because he explained my family completely.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really good with drama. I had worked as a hospital social worker. I'm great in crisis. Give me sudden death, grief and loss. I'm really good. And when he was talking, my heart stopped and I said, I can do this. I can do this thing called intervention. So no fancy course, no special thing that you see them a dime a dozen now. Dr. Picard mentored me. And that's how I learned how to do interventions. But I was a little uncomfortable, like saying, hi, here I am. guess who's coming to dinner?
Mhm.
And also, I was very cute, very short, and with long black hair and knee socks and a circle color pin. I didn't like going alone. So I decided that I had to go with someone else. And that's how I started doing interventions, and I did them on the side.
Okay.
And so that's how I started. And it's thanks to San Diego State. It's thanks to the world, the God shot that happened. And then I developed an invitational approach. I am good friends with Judith Landau. The Aspire model. I, for a very, very short time, worked with Brad Lamb. I know Patty Pike. Well, all these people do trainings. I don't do trainings because I think there is, I think you need to be a clinician to really deal with these multi-complex, or at least have one clinician with you, because some of the things we're getting today are so complex that in addition to just being a lot of people are in recovery and that's great, but that interventions is both an art and a skill. And I use a research methodology called portraiture that I'm pretty famous for family mapping. It's been developed by Dr. Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot out of Harvard, and I actually learned how to use it during my dissertation, which was not on the alcohol drug field, but it was on women and men who were widowed at a young age, because I had been a third generation widow, and I got to work with the New York Fire Department. I hope I'm not boring you.
No,
but I wanted to ask, what does portraiture mean in this context?
So portraiture is narrative inquiry. And I do it every time I do a first caller. Tell me about yourself. And what I try and do is create, hold on a second. Now you'll know these are ravings of a mad woman. A family which tells a story. Well, you can see it in a textbook. It's really nice and neat. A story, a portrait of that person, the identified loved one who's your patient. But in order to do that, I interview all the participants individually. Tell me about. But when you're doing that, you learn about everybody else in the family or the business team or something. So you end up with a portrait, and the portrait's not is, and it also can be verified by that identified loved one. No, that's not true. That's true. So I've done them when I've taught family and treatment centers. This is a wild looking one. I would come and teach you one. But
Oh, wow. Very cool.
They're very cool. There are a lot of color pen, but they're very interactive. So it's different. It's not your normal genogram.
Okay.
So every time I start out by interviewing everybody individually, and maybe if you're doing a whole family, you do it differently. Like when you're doing it in a treatment center and you bring them into your family. But for a first call, tell me why your heart's hurting. Tell me what's going on. Then you just go on a roadmap and you draw out, tell me about your family. You come away with a lot of information that you have to save, but you also come away with, you can click off what would be the 3 best treatment centers in the country for this person. Where do I have the saboteurs? Where do I see other things happening? And also it gives permission. Like if you did a family in your treatment center and you did it as a family group, you could be amazed about what happens. I remember I was doing a family map at a treatment center, and the kid looked like he was just so adorable. He looked like your perfect little college student. Only he shot up a 7-Eleven, but his family was extremely wealthy. There were 3 other children. They had things, but what happened? We're doing this family map, and the mother had a brother that was deceased. And one wondered, he died at a young age. So what happened was she started crying, and I said, why are you crying? And she cried, and she said, my brother, they lied and said his brother had died of a heart attack, but really he had died of HIV. And For the identified loved one in that moment, he got so excited. He started jumping up and down. He said, I need to talk to someone. I need to talk to something. Her being able to share how her father died gave him permission to actually question his gender. And do I like men? Do I like women? It was opening. On another time, there was a young girl who was about 30, who could have been your client, was a record executive, and she had everything in the world wrong with her: alcohol, drugs, eating, whatever. And the family had a history of ism in the family. The mother's part lived by secrets, which you learn from the map. But she had, and she knew I was coming to do this. She had a brother that died who probably was no more than 25, 27. And she put a halo on him. So what do I care? You don't have to follow the rules of a genogram. And that doesn't make sense because you're trying to do it for the patient. And what we learned was this brother was perfect. She had all these things wrong with her, and this kid was perfect. But then in the family, doing the family map, how did that brother die? That brother died in, well, I'll just say Hollywood, in a parking lot structure on a drug deal gone bad.
Mm-hmm.
And she functioned. I mean, clinically, this was in a family, so this was be for your clinical team. She was in a treatment center where everything was pushed on her to be bad because nobody could take a look at the grief and loss and pain of this young man. And, it was the ability to open. When you're doing an intervention, it works a totally different way. You're looking for, you're clicking off what would be the best place for that eval.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would it be in New Waters? Would it be somewhere else? What would be, who's going to mess this up? Who doesn't really care? Who do we want to make sure? And who needs help? Because it's not just the first person. Who else can we get to help along the way? But always keeping in mind that when you're hired, your goal is to invite that person to go to treatment or create some type of treatment without walls for them.
Mm-hmm. What do you do?
It's very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that approach. What do you do in a case where everything's set up and done all this work on the front end, families involved, invitation model, invite the identified client, and they say no? What do you do then?
So I would say to you what I always say: no is just a conversation starter. We always say Eskimos have 1,000 words for snow. And, it's not like, no, the plane doesn't leave till 2:00. So I got plenty of time. Or it can be many cases. I think there's a myth. I'm in I like Ken Seeley, but I don't want him to yell at me today, but I was in a textbook, Interventions Aren't Made for TV. It's not like if you can get to that yes, it's a lot easier to get to that yes away. But just remember, if you're doing an intervention and someone says yes right away, you got to hit back because now they're controlling the situation and they'll never stay in treatment. I guarantee you go in, they say yes, they're controlling it. You say, hey, let's talk back. But people sometimes take time. Think about the person that you had. How many times has that human had a recurrence or a relapse? But yes is a conversation starter. And I believe you can get to yes. I also believe that it's not just that, it's what is the successful scaffolding you've put in place? What are those boundaries you put in place? What is that change agreement? I mean, we're very good at doing change agreements, which is something I invented, which is fabulous, especially with the young adult and the family. I'm going to agree to support you in health and wellness. These are sort of my rules and love and compassion. And this is what you do. And if you don't do this, you get to go to a higher level of care. But you have to have those boundaries in place. How many times have you had a parent say, I could never throw them out of the house? Or better yet, even though my phone is not working at all today, they won't cut off the phone because they believe that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to work within the family system. You have to start where that family is, that human is. and create that. But no, I don't even know. No is just a conversation starter.
I love that answer.
And do you see, like you mentioned, Dr. Stanger, that, you know, if you're doing the intervention in the morning, the plane's not till 2:00, that there can be a shift prior to that. But do you also see when there's no's that then in the coming days that can also kind of turn around
Yeah,
pretty
because
quickly?
sometimes you have to stop. Look, you're not going to play all day. I
Right.
think an hour and a half, two, and then you got to hit no, and then you've got to go into plan B. What will be boundaries? What are you willing to support? What aren't you willing to support? And yes, or someone will say, "I really will go tomorrow," and they really will go. You have to you have to have the right scaffolding in place. You got to have a coach with them. If someone says, I'm going to go tomorrow, you don't leave them.
Right.
You then have a wellness mentor with them, and they get to stay with them so they can go take care of what they want. Sometimes executives are very much like that. I got to do this, I got to do that. But a good intervention or a good thing tries to take care of all the objections. What is A to Z objection? Is it I don't have childcare? My dog needs to be somewhere. I'm so important that like my executives can't live without me, but they've always been living without you because you haven't been doing the work.
Right.
Or I need to be on the movie set. I mean, there's just, you have to really do a lot of work to do a successful, I think, invitation to change.
Okay.
And you have to understand who your weak links are.
Right.
If Aunt Sally's going to give them home, then you've got to let everybody know. Aunt Sally, if you're willing to do this, what are the consequences of that?
So you will, when you're talking about where to send people, will do a geographic look to make sure there's nobody who's an enabler, the cool aunt or something who lives nearby, that kind of thing.
No, but I try and think about if this were my client, what would be the three best places in the United States for them? And where could they learn to thrive? And, sometimes it's not in your own backyard.
Sure.
A lot of times people say, well, I live in, I don't know, some little tiny town. Doesn't have any treatment, but I want them to be there. I want to be nearby. And you help someone explore, what does that mean? Is that because that's really fulfilling your need? Is there good family? Is there family by Zoom? Because you have to take a look and say, what is the quality of the family program? If there's no good family program, I would not refer to them.
I hear you.
That's just me. So no, you want to take a look. Geography's never had anything to do with for me, but you have to also check out what are people's resources. Resources are a big issue today. So do they have to have insurance friendly? And then you have to do that. Is the sky the limit? That they don't care what the cost is. But take a look, and then you have to know. I think you have an ethical obligation to know the treatment center, to visit it or talk with it. You can't send cold turkey because I don't know. X has just been around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we
run into a lot of the same stuff. I mean, it's the same but different, I guess, right? Because I would say a lot of the stuff that we do, a lot of the work that we do with clients, especially when they're coming in for detox, there could be a whole spectrum of like what that looks like. Some people may come in, they're already working with someone, like yourself or another stakeholder, interventionist, support person, and maybe they're already coming with a predetermined plan, and that's fine. We're happy to support that, keep the client on track, all of those things. But I would say the vast majority of people are coming in without a plan, and they just know that they need to detox, or maybe they're just willing enough to go to detox. And then all of the very similar stuff to what you're talking about, Dr. Stanger, is, we got to help educate the family. We got to help educate the client about what it is that they need to do. What are the variables? What can they afford? What do they need based on their individual needs? Help talk the family through, hey, if they're not exactly willing, what kind of boundaries are going to need to be put in place to help encourage this person to make the decision. And then, if all of the pieces fall into place, then we get to get the person to go to treatment. It's like it's a cheer-worthy moment, I think, right?
all while
I
getting
do.
the barriers out of the way,
Yeah.
overcoming the,
And I think you're in a very exciting position
Yeah.
because if you're doing the detox, I mean, that is where you need someone that's really crafted and really
Yes.
skilled in family and say, hey, this is great, but this is not the be all. Let's take a look at Johnny or Sally and let's take a look at their history. And that's where this family mapping, which takes a little bit of time, comes in like a genius because you can click off if you don't have to tell me about because you already got this story printed. And then people, they, they go, really? That's what it looks like? And you go, yeah. But, and you don't really go, but it's a way to group them in because you've got to get buy-in immediately from detox. It's not a be all end all, or,
Yeah.
if this is what you want to try, let's give this and we'll have follow up and we'll see how it works. Like I do also separately, I won't work with any family less than 10 hours. And it's all bespoke and concierge. So I have 10-hour family coaching agreement. Why? Because it takes that long and I'm not interested if I can't get your buy-in. I'm not interested. I'm just old enough and wise enough and done it along that I love to do that. But that way, if you even have that as part of your treatment team, and then let them play, let them experience, and they'll cry and they'll scream and they'll beg and everything, and maybe they'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's important work that you do, Dr. Stanger, and we really appreciate it. We've had the opportunity to work with you in the past on a couple of cases, and you do great work. We are happy to have you on the team, so to speak.
Well, we love New Waters, and I would be very excited to see you and obviously to collaborate more.
Yeah.
It's exciting where you're located, and I guess my accent's still Pennsylvanian, even though people mostly ask me what part of New York I'm from, and I go Pittsburgh, and they go, "Where's that?" So,
well,
we love when.
Go ahead.
Oh, I said we love when B comes out because he gets to play golf. It has nothing to do.
And what happened last time I played golf out there?
Oh yeah, everybody. I live at a place called the Bridges of Rancho Santa Fe. It was, I forget which, but he went and played with my husband, and lo and behold, he walked away with a hole in one on hole number 2, I
That's
believe.
right. You told us about that.
That
Unbelievable.
Celebration. And there were many colleagues of yours, especially Casey Gooding, who was actually positively jealous that could happen.
Yep. Well, you've taken such good care of me twice. Both times I've been to San Diego ever in my life, you've taken good care of me. And we want to return the favor here in Raleigh. And just thank you for all the work you do, not just what you do on an individual basis and with YPM, but all the people that you've influenced and mentored and inspired around the country, because everybody loves Louise and has been affected in some way. So thank you so much for everything you do. And we're looking forward to your book coming out. And just while we got you still on, how do people find Louise Stanger, Dr. Louise Stanger?
Ordinarily, if there wasn't something wrong with, all you do is I pick up my own phone. I don't have an answer machine. It's 619-507-1699. Or you can look at my website, which is allabout-interventions.com. I'm also on Youth Prevention Mentors website, and I'm also on the Balance of Majorca and Zurich's website. But again, all you have to do is reach out and I will return your phone call when Verizon decides to work.
Awesome.
Or give me an email. I have 3 different emails. But if you just go to my website and there's a little bot, I pop up and be able to do that. And I love you and I'm excited to come visit you.
Yeah.
And learn more about what you do and your wonderful psychiatrist. He is just fabulous.
Yes, Dr. Hong. He's amazing.
Very lucky to have him.
Yeah.
Everybody he has the gift of what I want every psychiatrist to have.
Amen
He
to that.
has I just want to give a shout out. He has the ability to speak beautifully
Mm.
to parents who are wounded. They
Mhm.
really are. And to explain in very clear terms what's going on with their loved one. And that is a gift that is cherishable because I
Mhm.
get to travel all across the world and he stands out as one of the best.
That is high praise no matter what, but come from you. It's I don't know if the praise gets much higher than that. So that's he will hear this. And
For
thank you
sure.
for sharing that.
Well, good. Well, keep doing what you're doing. Keep
You too.
inspiring.
Thank you.
And I'll look forward to coming to visit.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Stanger. We'll
Thank
see you soon.
you.
Thank you.